Get out, you ghetto trash! You don't belong here! Derek Morrison lunged forward, his finger stabbing the air inches from Rachel Williams's face. Rachel stumbled backward, her designer blazer and leather portfolio suddenly meaningless. Derek's voice boomed across the marble lobby. "What are you, lost? This isn't Section 8 housing!" He spread his arms wide, blocking her path to the elevators while his eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. Rachel's jaw clenched as she fought to maintain composure. Derek turned to the gathering crowd, performing for his audience. "These people think they can just walk into our building like they own it!" Smartphones emerged from pockets. A young woman began recording. The morning sun spotlighted Rachel's humiliation as dozens of professionals watched in stunned silence. Derek crossed his arms triumphantly, savoring his perceived victory over someone he deemed inferior. 20 minutes earlier, Rachel Williams had slid out of her black Tesla Model S in the underground parking garage, her heels clicking against polished concrete. The leather seats still held the warmth of her drive from O'Hare Airport, where she'd caught the red-eye from San Francisco. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "How's the surprise inspection going? The Chicago team has no idea you're coming." Rachel smiled, tucking the phone into her Hermes handbag. After months of disturbing reports about workplace culture at their newest office location, she'd decided to see things firsthand. As Chief Operations Officer of Williams Tech Innovations, these unannounced visits were her specialty. The elevator carried her from the parking garage to the main lobby of Morrison & Associates Financial Services, a gleaming 40-story tower in downtown Chicago's financial district. Through the glass walls, she could see the building directory listing Williams Tech Innovations, floors 35 to 40 inches in bold letters. Derek Morrison had been the facilities manager here for 15 years. His personnel file, which Rachel had reviewed on the plane, painted a troubling picture. 3 formal complaints in the past 2 years, all from employees of color, all dismissed as misunderstandings by building management. The complaints told a consistent story. Derek's old-school management style included questioning whether certain people belonged in professional settings. He'd been known to follow black employees to their floors, demanding additional identification. Hispanic cleaning staff reported he spoke to them like children, assuming they couldn't understand English. Patricia Wells, the black receptionist who'd worked here for 8 years, had filed the most recent complaint. Derek's daily microaggressions had escalated to outright hostility. He'd questioned her qualifications, suggested she was lucky to have the job, and made comments about her appearance being too casual for a professional environment. James Thompson, the security guard, had witnessed most of these incidents but remained silent. At 52, he couldn't afford to lose his job, especially not by challenging Derek's authority. The few times he'd suggested Derek was being too harsh, he'd been told to mind his own business. Sarah Carter, a marketing coordinator for one of the tenant companies, had also noticed Derek's pattern. The 28-year-old had watched him scrutinize the credentials of every person of color who entered the building while waving white visitors through without question. Building management turned a blind eye. Derek's supervisor, regional manager Tom Bradley, shared Derek's concerns about maintaining the building's professional standards. The code words were obvious to everyone except those in power. Rachel's surprise visit was designed to catch this toxic culture in action. She'd deliberately chosen not to announce her arrival, wanting to see how the building truly operated when no one was watching. Her business card read, "Rachel Williams, Chief Operations Officer, Williams Tech Innovations." Her LinkedIn profile showed her MBA from Wharton, her previous role as VP of Strategy at Google, and her marriage to tech billionaire Michael Williams. But none of that mattered to someone like Derek Morrison, who saw only the color of her skin. The building's prestigious address attracted Fortune 500 companies and wealthy professionals. The marble lobby featured original artwork worth more than most people's homes. Security cameras monitored every angle, though they'd rarely been used to hold anyone accountable for discrimination. Rachel carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd broken through every barrier the corporate world could throw at her. Her tailored clothing, perfect posture, and measured movements spoke of boardroom battles won and glass ceilings shattered. But she also carried the weight of every slight, every assumption, every time someone had looked at her and seen something less than she was. This building inspection wasn't just about corporate policy. It was about the daily reality faced by people who looked like her in professional spaces across America. The morning rush brought waves of employees through the lobby. Most were white professionals who sailed past Derek's station with nothing more than a nod. The few people of color faced additional scrutiny. Extra questions, longer delays, suspicious glances. Derek's territory was this lobby, where he ruled like a king of his own small kingdom. His security badge gave him the illusion of authority, but his real power came from an institution that enabled his prejudices while maintaining plausible deniability. As Rachel approached the reception desk that Monday morning at 9:15 a.m., she had no idea she was about to become the catalyst for the most expensive lesson Derek Morrison would ever receive. The stage was set for a collision between old prejudices and new realities, between institutional racism and individual accountability. Derek Morrison spotted Rachel the moment she stepped off the elevator. His eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance. An elegant black woman in expensive clothing, moving with the confidence of someone who belonged in boardrooms. Everything about her triggered his deeply ingrained suspicions. He abandoned his coffee and strode across the marble floor, his heavy footsteps echoing his determination to assert control. Rachel was examining the building directory when Derek's shadow fell across her. "Excuse me, miss. Can I help you with something?" His tone carried the false politeness of someone already convinced of wrongdoing. Rachel turned, offering a professional smile that Derek immediately interpreted as suspicious. "Good morning. I'm here to visit Williams Tech Innovations on the 35th floor." Derek's eyebrows shot up. Williams Tech was the building's most prestigious tenant, occupying 5 floors of prime real estate. The idea that this woman had legitimate business there struck him as absurd. "Really? And you are?" "Rachel Williams. I'm the Chief Operations Officer." Derek's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Sure you are, sweetheart. And I'm the Pope." Rachel's smile faltered. She reached into her portfolio, extracting a business card with crisp lettering. Derek barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "Anyone can print fake business cards these days. You'd be amazed what people try to pull." His voice carried enough volume to attract attention from nearby professionals. A small crowd began forming at a respectful distance, pretending to check their phones while straining to overhear. "Sir, I assure you my credentials are legitimate. Perhaps you could call upstairs to verify." "I don't think so." Derek stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over her. "See, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know when someone doesn't belong." The words hung in the air like poison. Rachel felt the familiar sting of assumptions made about her worth based solely on her appearance. But she also felt something else, a strategic patience born from years of navigating hostile corporate environments. "What exactly makes you think I don't belong here?" Derek's face flushed red. The direct question forced him to confront the racism he preferred to keep hidden behind professional language. "Look, lady, this is an upscale business district. We have standards to maintain, security protocols. You can't just walk in here expecting access to restricted areas." "Restricted areas? The 35th floor is a regular office space." "Not for people like you." The words slipped out before Derek could stop them. Several witnesses gasped audibly. Sarah Carter, who had been watching from near the reception desk, pulled out her phone and began recording. Rachel remained perfectly still, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. "People like me?" Derek realized his mistake but doubled down rather than back down. "Yeah, people who obviously don't have legitimate business here. People who think they can just walk into any building and demand access." "Based on what evidence? Based on common sense?" Derek's voice rose to a shout. "You think I was born yesterday? I see the games people play trying to get into buildings they don't belong in." Patricia Wells watched from behind the reception desk, her heart pounding as she witnessed Derek's discrimination on full display. She wanted to intervene but knew speaking up would cost her job. Her own experiences with Derek flooded back. The daily microaggressions, the questioning of her qualifications, the subtle suggestions that she was lucky to have her position. James Thompson shifted uncomfortably near the security station. He'd watched Derek target people of color for years, but had never seen it escalate this quickly or publicly. His conscience battled with his need for employment as he witnessed the systematic harassment he'd been complicit in through his silence. Rachel made a calculated decision. Rather than end this confrontation immediately by revealing her true identity, she would let Derek expose himself completely. Too many people like Patricia had suffered in silence. This moment could serve a larger purpose. "Sir, I'm simply trying to visit an office in this building. What specifically about my appearance suggests I don't belong here?" Derek's face twisted with frustration. The elegant way Rachel spoke, her obvious education and professionalism, created cognitive dissonance with his prejudiced assumptions. "Don't try to make this about race," he spat. "This is about security, about protecting legitimate businesses from what? From people who don't belong. People who might be here to steal something or cause trouble or sell drugs or whatever it is your people do." The lobby erupted in shocked murmurs. Derek's mask had completely slipped, revealing the ugly truth beneath his professional facade. "My people?" Rachel's voice remained steady as a surgeon's hand. Derek's chest heaved as he realized he'd gone too far, but pride prevented retreat. "Yeah, people who think they can just walk into our buildings, into our neighborhoods, and take what doesn't belong to them." The gathering crowd now numbered nearly 30 people. Office workers had abandoned their elevators and coffee runs to witness the spectacular display of racism unfolding in their lobby. "Our buildings?" Rachel repeated. "Who exactly do you think owns this building, Mr. Morrison?" Derek's name tag had given away his identity, and Rachel filed the information away for later use. His face darkened at her question. "People who earned their place here. People who worked hard and didn't expect handouts." "And you assume I haven't worked hard? Please, look at yourself. You probably got where you are through affirmative action, diversity quotas, playing the victim card." The accusations poured out like water from a broken dam. Years of resentment and racial animosity flooded the marble lobby as Derek revealed his true beliefs about successful people of color. Sarah Carter's phone camera captured every venomous word. Several other witnesses had begun recording as well, sensing they were documenting something that would have serious consequences. "So, in your professional opinion," Rachel said carefully, "I couldn't possibly have earned my position through merit? Not in a company like Williams Tech. That's serious business, not some community outreach program." Derek's dismissal of her claimed employer revealed another layer of his prejudice. In his mind, prestigious companies only hired people of color as token gestures rather than based on qualifications. "I see. And what evidence do you have that Williams Tech engages in tokenism?" "Common sense. These big companies have to meet their diversity numbers, so they hire people like you whether you're qualified or not." The lobby had gone completely silent except for Derek's heavy breathing and the soft clicking of phone cameras. At least a dozen professionals stood frozen, their morning routines forgotten as they witnessed discrimination happening in real time. Derek pulled out his radio, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is Morrison. I need backup in the main lobby. We have a hostile individual making false claims and refusing to comply with security directives." Rachel's eyebrows rose slightly. "Hostile? I haven't raised my voice once. Your attitude is hostile. Your refusal to accept reality is hostile. Your presence here is hostile." Derek's backup arrived. Two younger security guards who looked uncomfortable with the situation but followed their supervisor's lead. The younger guard, Marcus Rodriguez, had himself experienced Derek's subtle prejudice and felt sick watching it displayed so openly. "Gentlemen," Derek announced loudly, "this individual is trespassing, making fraudulent claims about employment, and becoming increasingly belligerent. She needs to be removed from the premises immediately." The guards hesitated, looking between Derek's purple face and Rachel's composed dignity. Something about the situation felt fundamentally wrong, but challenging Derek meant risking their jobs in a tight employment market. Rachel looked at the three men surrounding her, then at the crowd of witnesses whose phones were capturing every moment. Her voice remained steady as she spoke words that would soon change everything. "Before you escort me anywhere, gentlemen, perhaps you should verify exactly who you're about to remove from this building." Derek's face twisted into a sneer as he heard Rachel's suggestion about verification. The idea that she might actually have legitimate authority struck him as the most ridiculous bluff he'd ever encountered. "Oh, we're still playing this game?" Derek turned to address his growing audience, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain. "She wants us to verify her fake credentials. What's next, lady? You're gonna tell us you're the Queen of England? Nervous laughter rippled through some of the crowd, though many witnesses looked increasingly uncomfortable with Derek's escalating behavior. Sarah Carter continued recording, her phone capturing every moment of what was becoming a masterclass in workplace discrimination. "Mr. Morrison," Rachel said calmly, "a simple phone call to the 35th floor would resolve this situation." "Would it be now?" Derek mocked, pulling out his security radio again. "Because here's what I think is really happening. I think you're running some kind of con. I think you looked up the company online, printed some fake business cards, and figured you'd try to talk your way into their offices." He began pacing around Rachel like a predator circling prey, his voice growing louder with each accusation. "Let me guess. You were planning to steal laptops, copy some files, maybe plant some recording devices? That's what people like you do, right? Find ways to get into places where you don't belong." The racist implications hung heavy in the air. Several witnesses shifted uncomfortably, but none found the courage to intervene. Patricia Wells gripped her desk phone, torn between helping Rachel and protecting her own job security. Rachel maintained her composure, though fire burned behind her eyes. "People like me? Yeah, criminals, thieves, people who think they can scam their way into legitimate businesses." Derek was working himself into a frenzy, feeding off what he mistook for support from his silent audience. His 15 years of unchecked authority had convinced him that his prejudices were not only acceptable, but admirable. "You know what really gets me?" Derek continued, his voice rising to near shouting levels. "You people always want to make everything about race when you get caught, like we're supposed to feel guilty for protecting our property." "I haven't mentioned race once," Rachel pointed out quietly. "You don't have to. It's written all over your face. That victim mentality, that entitlement, thinking the world owes you something just because of your skin color." The younger security guard, Marcus Rodriguez, felt his stomach turn. He'd experienced Derek's casual racism himself, but had never seen it displayed so openly and viciously. Derek grabbed Rachel's business card from earlier and held it up like evidence in a courtroom. "This piece of paper? This is what passes for credentials nowadays? I could make one of these on my home computer." He dramatically tore the card in half, letting the pieces flutter to the marble floor. The gesture sent a clear message about his opinion of Rachel's legitimacy and dignity. "There! That's what I think of your fake executive position." Rachel watched the pieces of her card settle on the floor, each fragment representing years of education, hard work, and professional achievement that Derek had just symbolically destroyed. Her voice remained steady, but steel entered her tone. "That was unwise, Mr. Morrison." "Was it? Why, you gonna sue me?" Derek laughed harshly. "With what money? With what lawyers? You think anyone's gonna believe your word against mine?" His confidence was intoxicating, built on decades of institutional protection and racial privilege. Derek had never faced real consequences for his discrimination because the system had always protected men like him. "I've been doing this job for 15 years. Derek announced to his audience. 15 years of keeping riffraff out of this building. 15 years of maintaining professional standards. And I'm not about to let some welfare queen with a fake business card change that." The slur hit the lobby like a physical blow. Several witnesses gasped audibly. Even those who had remained neutral now looked shocked at Derek's open racism. James Thompson, the older security guard, finally found his voice. "Derek, maybe we should what?" Derek whirled on his colleague. "Go soft? Let anyone who prints a business card waltz into our building? That's not how security works, Thompson." Derek turned back to Rachel, emboldened by his own rhetoric. "You want to know what I think really happened here? I think you saw some rich black lady on TV, maybe that Oprah woman, and thought you could pretend to be successful too." The personal attack crossed another line. Derek was no longer content with questioning Rachel's credentials. He was attacking her very identity and worth as a human being. "Maybe you figured if you dressed up nice and acted all educated, people would just assume you belonged. Well, I've got news for you, sweetheart. I can spot a fake from a mile away." Derek began circling Rachel again, his movements becoming more aggressive and intimidating. The two backup security guards flanked her exit routes, creating a physical barrier that made several witnesses visibly nervous. "You know what else I think?" Derek continued his verbal assault. "I think you probably have a record. I think if we ran your real name through the system, we'd find outstanding warrants, drug charges, theft, the usual stuff from your community." Rachel's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but her voice remained level. "My community? The ghetto, the projects, wherever people like you come from before you try to infiltrate respectable society." Derek was now shouting loud enough to be heard on adjacent floors. His face had turned deep red with exertion and excitement as he fed off his own hatred. "I bet you don't even have a real job. I bet you're living off government assistance while pretending to be some big executive. That's what you people do. Take handouts while hardworking Americans foot the bill." The systematic destruction of Rachel's dignity continued as Derek attacked every aspect of her life and identity. His assumptions revealed the depths of his racial prejudice and the complete dehumanization of anyone who didn't look like him. "And another thing," Derek pointed accusingly at Rachel's wedding ring. "That rock on your finger? Probably fake, too. Or stolen. Because what kind of man would marry someone like you except another criminal?" The attack on her marriage and husband pushed Derek into even more dangerous territory. He was now making assumptions about Rachel's family that would soon prove catastrophically expensive. "Let me guess, baby daddy's in prison? Or maybe he's dealing drugs? Because successful black men don't exist outside of sports and rap music, and you sure don't look like a rapper's wife." Sarah Carter's recording captured every venomous word as Derek's racism reached new depths. The crowd had grown to over 40 people, many looking sick at what they were witnessing. Derek pulled out his phone with theatrical flourish. "You know what? I'm calling the police. Let them sort out your real identity when they run your prints." "The police?" Rachel asked quietly. "That's right. Let's see how tough you are when real authority shows up. Let's see if your fake confidence holds up in handcuffs." Derek began dialing, his movements exaggerated for maximum intimidation effect. He was confident that police would side with him over Rachel, another assumption that revealed his deep-seated beliefs about how authority operated in America. "I'm going to tell them we have someone impersonating a corporate executive, probably casing the building for a future break-in. They'll love that." As Derek prepared to make his call, Rachel made a decision that would change everything. She reached into her portfolio and pulled out her own phone, her fingers moving with deliberate precision. "Before you call the police, Mr. Morrison, perhaps I should make a call of my own." Derek paused, his finger hovering over the final digit. Something in Rachel's tone had shifted, a confidence that went beyond mere defiance. "Call whoever you want, lady. Your dealer? Your parole officer? Makes no difference to me." Rachel's thumb moved across her phone screen with practiced ease. The number she dialed was saved under Michael, a contact that would soon turn Derek's world upside down. "Hi, honey," Rachel said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. "I'm in the lobby of our Chicago building, and I think you need to hear what your facilities manager has been saying about your wife." Derek's face went from red to white in the span of 3 seconds. The phone in his hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as Rachel's words echoed through the marble lobby. "Our Chicago building?" Derek's voice cracked like a 13-year-old boy hitting puberty. The theatrical confidence that had carried him through 15 minutes of racist harassment evaporated like morning mist. Rachel held her phone steady, ensuring her husband's voice would carry clearly through the lobby's perfect acoustics. "Rachel? What's happening down there? Is everything all right?" The voice belonged to Michael Williams, a name that appeared on the building directory, on the company letterhead, and on Derek's own paycheck. The tech billionaire whose wedding photos had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune magazines. The man whose biography Derek had probably read while Googling his own employer. "Well, honey," Rachel continued with crystalline clarity, "your facilities manager, Derek Morrison, has spent the last 20 minutes explaining why people like me don't belong in professional buildings. He's also shared some interesting theories about my employment history, my criminal record, and our marriage." The silence in the lobby was deafening. 40-plus witnesses stood frozen, watching Derek's career implode in real time. Sarah Carter's phone captured every moment of the most expensive mistake in corporate security history. Michael Williams' voice carried the quiet authority of a man who controlled billions of dollars and thousands of jobs. "Derek Morrison, put him on the phone." Derek's hands shook as he stared at Rachel's extended phone. The device might as well have been a loaded gun pointed at his future. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his brain struggling to process the catastrophic reversal of fortune. I don't. This can't be. Mr. Morrison, Rachel said with deadly calm. My husband would like to speak with you. The gathering crowd pressed closer, sensing they were witnessing history. Patricia Wells emerged from behind the reception desk, her eyes wide with vindication and terror. James Thompson stood paralyzed, realizing his own complicity in years of institutional racism. Derek's hand trembled as he reached for the phone, then jerked back as if it were electrified. This has to be some kind of trick. Rachel's eyebrows rose slightly. A trick? Are you suggesting I'm impersonating my own husband? Derek Morrison. Michael Williams' voice cut through the lobby like a blade. Take the phone. The command carried the weight of absolute authority. Derek had no choice but to accept the device, his sweaty palm nearly dropping it twice. Mr. Williams? Sir, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Has there? Michael's voice was glacial. Because from what I just heard, you've been quite clear about your understanding. You understand that my wife doesn't belong in professional buildings. You understand that successful black people are frauds. You understand that our marriage is somehow illegitimate. Derek's face cycled through shades of gray as each word landed like a physical blow. The lobby watched him crumble in real time, his authority and confidence disintegrating before their eyes. Sir, I had no idea. If I had known who she was. If you had known who she was, you would have treated her differently? Michael's question was a trap wrapped in silk. So your behavior depends on someone's connections rather than their basic human dignity? Derek realized he was digging his grave deeper with every word. No, sir, that's not what I meant. What did you mean when you called my wife ghetto trash? What did you mean when you suggested she was a criminal? What did you mean when you tore up her business card and threw it on the floor like garbage? Each question hit Derek like a sledgehammer. The witnesses around him began pulling out their own phones, realizing they were watching a masterclass in accountability being delivered by one of America's most powerful executives. Mr. Williams, please, I was just doing my job. Your job is to provide security, not to racially profile my employees and family members. Your job is to assist building tenants, not to humiliate them based on their skin color. Derek's legs began to shake. 15 years of employment, his pension, his reputation, his entire future was evaporating with each word from his ultimate boss. Sir, if you could just give me another chance. Another chance? Michael's laugh was devoid of humor. Derek, you've had 15 years of chances. You've had chances every time you targeted an employee of color. You've had chances every time someone filed a complaint that was mysteriously dismissed. You've had chances every time you chose prejudice over professionalism. The lobby had become a courtroom, with Derek as the defendant facing the most powerful judge in his professional universe. Derek Morrison, you are terminated immediately. Your access to this building is revoked. Security will escort you out within the next 5 minutes. Human Resources will contact you about the return of company property and the forfeiture of your pension benefits. Derek's knees buckled. The financial implications hit him like a tsunami. No job, no pension, no references, no future in building management. At 55 years old, he was unemployable in his field. Please, Mr. Williams, I have a mortgage, I have bills. You should have considered those obligations before you decided to humiliate my wife in front of 40 witnesses while being recorded on multiple phones. Rachel gently took her phone back from Derek's nerveless fingers. Around the lobby, the witnesses stood in stunned silence, watching justice being delivered in real time. Derek Morrison, who had ruled this lobby like a tyrant for 15 years, now stood as powerless as every person of color he had ever targeted. The reversal was complete. Derek Morrison stood in the center of the marble lobby like a man facing execution. The phone call had ended, but Michael Williams' words still echoed through the space, each syllable a nail in the coffin of Derek's career. This can't be happening, Derek whispered, his voice barely audible. This is all a big misunderstanding. Rachel slipped her phone back into her purse with calm precision. Her voice remained steady as she addressed the man who had spent 20 minutes destroying her dignity. Mr. Morrison, there's no misunderstanding. 40 people just watched you reveal exactly who you are. Derek's eyes darted frantically around the lobby, searching for allies among the crowd of witnesses. Instead, he found only disgust, shock, and cold judgment from people who had seen his true character exposed. "You don't understand," Derek pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. "I've worked here for 15 years. I was just trying to maintain security standards." Patricia Wells stepped forward from behind the reception desk, her voice shaking with years of suppressed anger. "Security standards? Is that what you call questioning my qualifications every day, telling me I'm lucky to have my job?" Derek's face paled as he realized other victims were finding their voices. The foundation of his little kingdom was crumbling beneath his feet. "Patricia, You never meant what?" Patricia's voice grew stronger. "You never meant to make me feel like I didn't belong here?" James Thompson stepped forward, guilt finally overwhelming his self-preservation instincts. "Derek, I've watched you target people based on skin color for years. I should have spoken up sooner." Derek whirled toward his colleague, panic replacing arrogance. "Thompson, you know I'm not racist. I treat everyone fairly." "Do I?" James's voice was heavy with regret. "I've seen you wave white visitors through while demanding extra ID from every person of color." Sarah Carter held up her phone, screen still recording. "I have 23 minutes of video showing exactly who you are. Every slur, every assumption, every moment of cruelty." Derek's eyes fixed on the phone like it was a weapon. "You can't use that. I didn't consent to being recorded." "This is a public space," Sarah replied coolly. "And you were speaking loud enough for everyone to hear." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing building security officers summoned by management. Their faces were grim as they approached Derek with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Morrison," the lead officer said formally, "surrender your access badge and keys immediately." Derek's hand moved instinctively to protect the badge that had been his source of authority for 15 years. "You can't do this. I have rights." "You had a contract," the officer corrected. "It included a morality clause you've just violated spectacularly." Derek fumbled with his badge holder, fingers shaking so badly he could barely unhook the lanyard. The plastic card that had given him power over others now felt like a weight around his neck. "Please," Derek begged, turning back to Rachel with tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were." Rachel's expression remained impassive. "The problem isn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is that you thought it didn't matter." The security officers flanked Derek, making it clear his time was over. Around the lobby, witnesses captured the final moments of his downfall on their phones. "My pension," Derek whispered. "My benefits. Everything's gone." "Yes," Rachel said simply. "Just like the dignity you tried to take from me and every other person of color who's walked through these doors." Derek's shoulders sagged as the full weight crashed down. 15 years of employment, gone. His professional reputation, destroyed. His financial security, eliminated. The officers began escorting Derek toward the exit, his walk of shame taking him past every witness to his racist tirade. The marble floor that had echoed with confident footsteps now amplified his shuffling defeat. "This will ruin me," Derek said to no one in particular. "Good," Patricia Wells replied from behind her desk. "Maybe now others like you will think twice." The elevator doors closed behind Derek Morrison, removing him from the building he had controlled through fear and prejudice for 15 years. In the lobby, witnesses stood in stunned silence, processing what they had seen. Rachel straightened her blazer and checked her watch. She still had a surprise inspection to conduct, but the most important work had already been done. Derek's removal was just the beginning of the changes coming to this building. Justice had been swift, public, and absolute. 3 days after Derek Morrison's termination, Sarah Carter's video exploded across social media platforms like wildfire. The 23-minute recording, posted with the hashtag #JusticeForRachel, garnered 2 million views within the first 24 hours. The video's impact was immediate and devastating. Major news networks picked up the story, with CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC all featuring segments about workplace discrimination in corporate America. Derek's face became synonymous with institutional racism, his name trending on Twitter alongside terms like karma and accountability. This is Susan Martinez reporting from Chicago, where a facilities manager's racist tirade has cost him everything, the CNN correspondent announced from outside the Morrison & Associates building. Derek Morrison's 15-year career ended in spectacular fashion when he targeted the wrong person, the wife of his own boss. The story resonated beyond social media outrage. Federal investigators from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission launched a formal investigation within 48 hours, their interest piqued by the clear documentation of systematic discrimination. "We've received over 30 complaints about Mr. Morrison's conduct spanning the last decade," announced EEOC Director Maria Rodriguez during a press conference. "This video provides unprecedented evidence of patterns we've been investigating for years." The investigation revealed a paper trail of dismissed complaints, ignored reports, and institutional cover-ups. Patricia Wells' harassment claims, previously buried in human resources files, suddenly became smoking gun evidence of a toxic workplace culture. Derek's personal life disintegrated as quickly as his professional reputation. His wife, Susan, filed for divorce after video clips of his racist rants appeared on her Facebook feed, shared by horrified neighbors and former friends. "I don't know the man I saw in that video," Susan told a reporter from the Chicago Tribune. 23 years of marriage, and I never knew he harbored such hatred. I can't be associated with that poison." Derek's 2 adult children publicly disavowed their father's actions on social media. His daughter Jessica, a teacher in suburban Chicago, posted a statement saying, "The man in that video doesn't represent the values I was raised with or the person I choose to be." Financial ruin followed social exile. Derek's termination included forfeiture of his pension benefits due to the morality clause violation. His attempts to find new employment were futile. The video had made him unemployable in any customer-facing role. "I applied to 47 jobs in 3 weeks, Derek confided to his court-appointed attorney. "The moment they Google my name, it's over. I'm financially destroyed." Legal consequences mounted daily. Rachel Williams filed a federal discrimination lawsuit seeking damages for emotional distress, defamation, and violation of her civil rights. The suit named both Derek personally and Morrison & Associates as defendants. "This case represents a clear pattern of institutional racism that went unchecked for years," announced Rachel's attorney, prominent civil rights lawyer David Carter. "My client's experience was traumatic, but it also exposed systemic problems that have harmed countless others." The lawsuit opened floodgates for additional claims. Patricia Wells filed her own federal suit, citing years of harassment and a hostile work environment. James Thompson, the security guard, came forward as a whistleblower, providing documentation of Derek's discriminatory practices. "I have emails, incident reports, and recorded conversations showing how complaints about Derek were systematically buried," Thompson testified before federal investigators. "Management knew about his behavior and chose to protect him instead of his victims." Morrison & Associates faced a public relations nightmare that threatened their business relationships. Major corporate clients began canceling contracts, unwilling to be associated with a company that had enabled systematic racism. The building's other tenants demanded action. Williams Tech Innovations, as the largest tenant, led a coalition threatening to relocate unless comprehensive reforms were implemented immediately. "We will not operate in an environment that tolerates discrimination," Michael Williams announced during a press conference. "Our employees deserve better, and we'll find a building that shares our values if necessary." Derek's criminal legal troubles began when prosecutors filed federal hate crime charges related to his threats and intimidation. The recorded evidence made prosecution straightforward, with Derek's own words providing irrefutable proof of racially motivated harassment. "The defendant's conduct goes beyond workplace discrimination," federal prosecutor Janet Morrison explained to the court. "His threats, intimidation, and systematic targeting of individuals based on race constitute criminal behavior under federal hate crime statutes." The trial became a media spectacle, with Derek's racist rants played repeatedly in courtrooms and on television. His defense attorney struggled to mount any credible argument against video evidence that showed Derek's true character. Expert witnesses testified about the psychological impact of Derek's behavior on his victims. Dr. Angela Washington, a specialist in workplace trauma, explained how systematic discrimination creates lasting emotional damage. The defendant's actions weren't isolated incidents, Dr. Washington testified. They represent a pattern of psychological terrorism designed to make people of color feel unwelcome and unsafe in professional environments. The courtroom gallery was packed with Derek's victims, who had found courage to speak publicly about their experiences. Patricia Wells delivered powerful testimony about years of daily microaggressions and systematic harassment. "Every morning, I dreaded coming to work," Patricia told the court through tears. "Derek Morrison made me question my worth, my qualifications, and my right to exist in that space. The damage he caused will take years to heal." Derek's sentencing hearing drew national attention. Federal Judge Patricia Thompson, herself a black woman who had faced similar discrimination, delivered a scathing rebuke before announcing the maximum penalty under federal guidelines. "Mr. Morrison, your actions represent the worst of American workplace culture," Judge Thompson declared. "You used your position of authority to terrorize innocent people based solely on their race. This court will send a clear message that such behavior has serious consequences." Derek received 18 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. He was also ordered to pay $2.3 million in damages to his victims and perform 2,000 hours of community service focused on racial reconciliation. The financial penalties destroyed Derek's remaining assets. His suburban home went into foreclosure, his retirement accounts were seized, and his professional certifications were permanently revoked. Morrison and Associates implemented sweeping reforms to avoid bankruptcy. New management hired diversity consultants, established anonymous reporting systems, and mandated comprehensive bias training for all employees. The case became a landmark in employment law, cited in legal textbooks and corporate training programs nationwide. Business schools began using Derek's downfall as a case study in the costs of workplace discrimination. Rachel Williams used her platform to advocate for broader reforms in corporate America. She established the Workplace Dignity Foundation, providing legal support for discrimination victims and pushing for stronger anti-bias policies. Derek Morrison's behavior wasn't an aberration, Rachel explained during her foundation's launch. "It's a symptom of systemic problems that require systematic solutions. We're going to make sure his victims didn't suffer in vain." The video of Derek's racist tirade continued to circulate, serving as a permanent reminder that prejudice and hatred have real consequences in the modern world. 6 months after Derek Morrison's sentencing, Rachel Williams stood in the renovated lobby of what was now called the Williams Business Center. The marble floors still gleamed under morning sunlight, but the atmosphere had transformed completely. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams," called out Patricia Wells, who now served as the building's director of tenant relations. Her promotion had come with a significant salary increase and the respect she'd always deserved. The fear that once shadowed her daily routine had been replaced by confidence and purpose. Rachel smiled warmly, remembering the scared woman who had watched silently during Derek's racist tirade. "Good morning, Patricia. How are the new diversity training sessions going?" "Phenomenally well," Patricia replied, her voice filled with pride. "We've had 0 discrimination complaints since implementation. The anonymous reporting system you suggested has created an environment where people feel safe speaking up." The changes extended far beyond policy updates. James Thompson had been promoted to head of security after his whistleblower testimony, his guilty conscience transformed into active advocacy for workplace justice. The building now employed a diverse security team trained in cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques. Sarah Carter's viral video had become more than internet content. It evolved into a powerful tool for corporate education. Major companies across America now use the footage in mandatory bias training, showing employees the real-world consequences of unchecked prejudice. The Derek Morrison video has been viewed over 50 million times, Sarah explained during a recent interview with 60 Minutes. But more importantly, it sparked conversations in boardrooms across the country about accountability and institutional change. Derek Morrison himself had become a cautionary tale studied in business schools and law enforcement academies. His name appeared in employment law textbooks alongside other landmark cases of workplace discrimination. After serving 14 months of his 18-month sentence, Derek was released to a halfway house in suburban Chicago. His world had shrunk to minimum wage jobs and court-mandated community service at racial reconciliation centers. "I lost everything," Derek admitted during a mandatory counseling session. "My career, my family, my reputation, my future, all because I couldn't see past the color of someone's skin." His ex-wife, Susan, had remarried and moved to California, taking their remaining assets and cutting all contact. His children maintained their public disavowal, refusing to associate with the man whose hatred had destroyed their family name. Derek's financial ruin was complete. His foreclosed home had sold for a fraction of its value, the proceeds going directly to his victims through court-ordered restitution. He lived in a studio apartment working night shifts at a warehouse, one of the few employers willing to hire someone with his criminal record. "Sometimes I lie awake thinking about that day," Derek confessed to his parole officer. 20 minutes of showing my true character cost me everything I'd worked for over 50 years. The Workplace Dignity Foundation that Rachel established had grown into a national organization with chapters in 37 states. The foundation provided legal support for discrimination victims while pushing for stronger anti-bias legislation at federal and state levels. Derek Morrison's case proved that accountability is possible, Rachel explained during a keynote address at the National Civil Rights Convention. But individual justice isn't enough. We need systematic change to prevent future Derek Morrisons from terrorizing workers. The foundation's impact extended beyond legal advocacy. They'd successfully lobbied for stronger hate crime legislation, mandatory bias training for managers, and anonymous reporting systems in federal buildings. Corporate America had taken notice. Companies began implementing Morrison protocols, comprehensive anti-discrimination policies designed to prevent the kind of institutional racism that had flourished unchecked for years. Rachel's surprise inspection that Monday morning had accomplished far more than she'd originally intended. What began as a routine corporate visit had evolved into a movement for workplace justice that continued to grow 6 months later. Discrimination thrives in silence and dies in the light of accountability, Rachel told a packed auditorium at Harvard Business School. Derek Morrison thought he could humiliate me because no one had ever held him accountable before. He learned that every action has consequences. The audience of future business leaders hung on every word, understanding they were hearing from someone who had turned personal trauma into systematic change. Derek Morrison's racist tirade had lasted 23 minutes. The consequences would last forever. His victims had found justice, healing, and purpose. His enablers had been removed or reformed. His institution had been transformed from a place of discrimination into a model of inclusion. But perhaps most importantly, his downfall had sent a message that echoed through corporate boardrooms across America. Prejudice has a price, and that price is everything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own experiences with workplace discrimination. Your voice matters. Follow for more stories of justice prevailing over prejudice. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in your workplace? What did you do about it? And more importantly, what will you do next time? Because there will be a next time, and someone's dignity will depend on your courage to speak up.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.